Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udhirayet अष्टप्रयेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भागवते तं श्लोके भक्तिर्भवतिर्नैष्टिकी ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna, thank you so much for joining. So we'll resume our discussions from the 6th canto, 13th chapter, verse 16. So this section is essentially, or this chapter is talking about the sinful reactions that Indra is suffering from because of the sin of killing a Brahmana. So the previous time when he killed a Brahmana, Vishwarupa, then he was able to neutralize the sin by distributing it amongst the earth and the water and the tree and the women. However, this time it appears that nobody was willing to take on the sins of Indra. And then we also noted that Indra had initially expressed reluctance to do battle with Vishwarupa for this very reason, that he didn't want to be contaminated by the sins of killing a Brahman. So at that time, the rishis, they had assured him that after he kills Vritrasur, they will perform the necessary purificatory tasks so that he is relieved of the sins. But then after Indra killed Vritrasur, it is said that all the Brahmins, they left without looking at Indra. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says is that the Brahmanas were also not fully honest with Indra. That while there was power in the performance of the Ashwamedha Yagya, but they were also aware that Ashwamedha Yagya can only be there after Indra has suffered some portion of the sinful reaction. So their expectation was that Indra would suffer. And at the time when his suffering was sufficient, then they would come and do the Ashwamedha Yagya. Okay, so we'll resume from verse 16. Tavatrinakam nahu shashashasa vidyatapo yoga balanubhava sasampadhaishwari madana buddhir nitas drishcham gatim indra patnya. As long as King Indra lived in the water, wrapped in the stem of the lotus, Nahusha was equipped with the ability to rule the heavenly kingdom due to his knowledge, austerity, and mystic power. Nahusha, however, blinded and maddened by power and opulence, made undesirable proposals to Indra's wife with a desire to enjoy her. Thus, Nahusha was cursed by a Brahman and later became a snake. So this pastime is elaborately described in Mahabharata, that Indra, in order to escape the sin personified, who appeared as an old lady who constantly was chasing him, he goes into the Manasarovar lake, and Manasarovar is specially created by Lord Shiva, and it is guarded on all sides by Shivdutas. So when Indra went into the Manasarovar, then the personality of sin could not follow him inside because of the fear of the Rudras and the Shivadutas who were guarding the Manasarovar. And for the same reason, Agni could not enter. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that it's not that Agni was unable to enter water, because Agni does enter into water to offer the oblations to Varun. Right? So Agni was not affected by water, but Agni was also scared to cross these Rudras that were guarding Manasarovar. So Indra, for 1,000 years, he lived in that stem with fear, submerged in water. He made himself very, very minute, and he entered into the filaments of a lotus, and there he suffered hunger and this kind of a degradation for 1,000 years. So while he was in this position for 1,000 years, the Devas had a council to find out who would be qualified to lead the Swargalok. So at that time, Nahusha was the emperor of the earthly planet, and they were very much impressed by his knowledge and austerity and penances. So they invited him to become also the ruler of the heavenly kingdom. So he was in a unique position that he was ruling both the middle and the upper planetary system. And in the Mahabharata, it's mentioned that one day Nahusha got up in the morning to do his morning oblations. And as prescribed in the Vedas, he was performing the yajna, and he was saying Surya Namah, Chandra Namah. And then he suddenly stopped. And then he realized that after he does the yajna and he goes into the court, then actually Surya and Chandra will be standing before him in an inferior position. So he was like, why should I worship them? They should be worshipping me. So then he started making all these changes. He started saying that all of you should worship me. And the Devas were tolerating it. And then he saw Sachi, the wife of Indra, and became very much attracted to her. So he kept pursuing her to come. So he had this logic that you are the wife of the ruler of the Swarga. And because I am the ruler of the Swarga, you are my wife. You are my property. And Sachi said, I'm Indra's wife. I'm the wife of a person, not a position. But Nahusha was refusing to say that, and he was getting increasingly angry. So then Sachi goes to Brihaspati for help, and then Brihaspati says that you say that you will come to meet him, but on the condition that your palanquin is drawn by the Saptarishis. So the Saptarishis, in order to appease Nahusha, they carried Sachi in the palanquin. No, they said that Nahusha should come to Sachi's palace on a palanquin carried by the Saptarishis. So Nahusha was sitting on the palanquin, the Saptarishis were carrying it. And because they were old, they were moving slowly, and Nahusha was very impatient to enjoy with Sachi. So Agastya Rishi, who's supposedly much shorter, was moving slowly because he had short feet and he was slowing everybody down. So Nahusha got angry at Agastya and he kicked him, saying, Sharpa Sarpa. So Sharpa Sarpa means move fast, move fast. So now Agastya got angry and he turned and looked at him and he says, Sarpa Bhava. And then Nahusha becomes a python. And of course, before he falls from his position, he begs forgiveness. And Agastya gives him a few benedictions. He says that you will always have enough food to eat, and anything that will come into your grip can never escape. And finally, he said that when you will have a conversation with a great personality who will speak about the principles of dharma, then you will be freed from this body. So in this way, Nahusha, he stayed there for hundreds and thousands of years as a snake, and then um, he then there is the five Pandavas who are now basically they're escaping from the Kauravas, and this is right after the burning of the Lakshagraha. So they were lying low. So they go to this place, and Bhima goes around looking for wood, etc. And then he sees this large snake, and Bhima, of course, is not scared of anything. So he says that he just walks in there, picking up the snake, saying, "I'll throw it away." And of course, Nahusha had his benediction, so he tied himself around Bhima, and regardless of how much power Bhima would exert, he could not escape. So then, after some time, Yudhishthira comes, and he starts requesting Nahusha to leave Bhima. So then there is this very, very exalted, very interesting conversation on dharma that happens between Nahusha and Yudhishthira. It's kind of similar to the conversation that happened between Yudhishthira and Yamraj on the side of the lake. And when Yudhishthira answers all of Nahusha's questions correctly, then Nahusha gives up his snake body. And Nahusha essentially is an ancestor of the Pandavas. So he gives up his snake body and goes back to heaven. Okay, so back to the chapter, verse 17. Tato gato brahmagirupahuta ratam maradhyana nivaritaga papastu dikte vataya hatauja tam nabhya budavitam vishnupatnya. Indra's sins were diminished by the influence of Rudra, the demigod of all directions. Because Indra was protected by the goddess of fortune, Lord Vishnu's wife, who resides in the lotus clusters of Manasarovar lake, Indra's sin could not affect him. Indra was ultimately relieved of all the reactions of his sinful deeds by strictly worshipping Lord Vishnu. Then he was called back to the heavenly planets by the Brahmins and reinstated in this position. So the offense of committing a sin on the strength of atonement, thinking that I will perform this sin and I will atone later on, is known as agaha. And so here it is said that nivarita agaha, papa. So Indra had done two sins. So papa was the sin of killing a Brahman. So that was the more explicit said. The other sin was aga, that he went into the battlefield expecting to sin and then be relieved of the sin by atonement. So like in chanting, we have the seventh offense, right? That to commit sinful activities on the strength of the holy name, right? So Indra had both of it going on, papa and aga. But then there is also the remediation that is there. Right? So since personified could not attack him because he was protected by the Rudras, who were the guardians of the northeastern direction and the Manasarovar. Then Lakshmi Devi, she resides in the lotuses of Manasarovar, and she was also favorably inclined to Indra. So while he was suffering the reactions of the sins, so one of the reactions of the sin is that one develops the tendency to commit more sins. And so we had studied in the Nectar Devotion that Kuta, Bij, Pap, and Aprarabdha and Prarabdha. Right? So when one commits a sin, and then and the seed of that sin plants itself, and it's present in a subtle way, and then over time, from kuta to bija, from bij to aprara, until the time it actually manifests as explicit sinful activities. But Indra was protected from that, and also because of the suffering that he was going through, he was also negating the sinful reaction. So ultimately, when his reactions were sufficiently mitigated, the Saptarishis, they invited him to come back to the heavenly planets. So they had promised that they would do the Ashwamedh Yajna for him. So now that his sins were sufficiently reduced, the remnants of the sins, they were washed away by the performance of Ashwamedh Yajna for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu. So verse 18, Tam cha brahma rishiyo bhyetya hayamedhena bharata yathavadikshayam chakru purusharadhanenaha. O king, when Lord Indra reached the heavenly planets, the saintly Brahmins approached him and properly initiated him into a horse sacrifice, Ashwamedh Yajna, meant to please the Supreme Lord. Right? So Brahma Rishis here is pointing to Vishnu Chakravarti says to the Saptarishis, even though anybody could be there are many Brahma Rishis, but I think in this context, it's understood that they are the Saptarishi, and also noted that the Ashwamedh Yajna is performed for different reasons. It's performed for enjoyment, performed for supremacy, but Indra performed it explicitly to please the Lord. Verse 19 and 20. Athejamane purushe sarvadeva mayatmani ashwamedhe mahindrena vitate brahmavadivi savaitwastra vado bhuya api papachayo nripa nitas teneva shunyaya nihara bhanuna. The horse sacrifice performed by the saintly Brahmins relieved Indra of the reactions to all his sins because he worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead in that sacrifice. O king, although he had committed a gravely sinful act, it was nullified at once by the sacrifice, just as fog is vanquished by a brilliant sunrise. So one more question over here, that if that is the power of performing the Ashwamedh Yajna for the Lord, why didn't the rishis perform it right away? And this we also know as practicing devotees, that in order to perform spiritual activities, even though bhakti is considered to be fully independent, it can manifest. There's a verse, right? Bhakti can manifest in animals. So, so we see what's the example of manifest in Gajendra? We see bhakti manifesting. It can manifest in low birth. We can see it in Prahlad and Bali Maharaj. It can manifest with one who is in the mode of ignorance, like Mridati. It can manifest one who is in the mode of passion, like Dhruv Maharaj. It can manifest one who is in the mode of goodness, like Prithu Maharaj. And it can manifest one who is in the mode of pure goodness, like the what's the name of the sons? The sons of the Pracheta. Thank you. Like it manifested in the in the prachetas. So bhakti is fully independent, but the restriction is from the performer's side. And so, like when you're chanting, you can see the difference. If you're chanting later in the day, the environment is very passionate, it's difficult to chant. Does not mean that the holy name has lost its potency, just means that your ability to connect with the holy name is mitigated. So similarly, Indra, because of all the sinful reactions that were now sitting in him, the sinful action of killing a Brahman, the sinful action of performing sinful activity with the expectation to neutralize it. So he would not have been able to even sit in the Ashwamedha Yajna. But now, after 1,000 years of purification, now he becomes qualified to sit in the Ashwamedha Yajna. And the real negation of all this is because of the performance of the Ashwamedha Yajna, because of the mercy of the Lord. Verse 21, Yavajimedena yathoditena vitayamanena marichimishrahe istvadhyajanam purusham puranam Indra Mahana Savidhuta Papa. King Indra was favored by Marichi and the other great sages. They performed the sacrifice just according to the rules and regulations, worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supersoul, the original person. Thus, Indra regained his exalted position and was again honored by everyone else. And then the next two verses are the last two verses in the chapter. After that, we'll pause for any discussion. Idam mahakyanam ashesha papamana prakshalanam tirthapadanukirtanam bhakti uchresham bhaktijananuvaranam mahendra moksham vijayam marutvatah patayorakyanam idam sada buddha Shanvanti yatha pravaniendriyam dhanyam yasasyam nikhilagamocharam ripunjayam swastya ayanam tathayusham. In this very great narrative, there is a glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. There are statements about the exaltedness of devotional service. There are descriptions of devotees like Indra and Vritrasura. And there are statements about King Indra's release from sinful life and about his victory in fighting the demons. By understanding this incident, one is relieved of all sinful reactions. Therefore, the learned are always advised to read this narration. If one does so, one will become expert in the activities of the senses. His opulence will increase and his reputation will become widespread. One will also be relieved of all sinful reactions. He will conquer all his enemies, and the duration of his life will increase. Because this narration is auspicious in all respects, learned scholars regularly hear and repeat it on every festival day. So today is Ekadashi. Ekadashi is one of the most auspicious days, and there is an exalted falstuti that is attached to it. It also sets the stage of speaking about this pastime in much more details. So the remaining, so this is the 13th chapter, and I believe the remaining 3 or 4 chapters. So 6 cantos and 19 chapters, so 6 more chapters are left. So either for the remaining 4 or 5 chapters are dedicated to further description of this pastime, right? So we kind of get the ending of the pastime. Vitrasura is is killed, we got the beginning of the pastime that Chitraketu did not have a child, he got the child. Now we will see the middle part of the pastime. That what happened after Chitrakuta was speeched, what was the offense that he did. And the reason is because this pastime contains a little bit of everything. It contains Krishna, it contains devotees, contains the impact of the modes of material nature, pious and impious activities, the result of impious activities. So in a way, it's a microcosm of our own lives. But it ended auspiciously. That is why this pastime is highly recommended. Okay, so I'll stop over here and see if there's any discussion before we start with our next chapter, 14th chapter.
About this witch that follow Indra all everywhere, so he has to go and hide in the lake. Where does this witch come from?
Where does what come from, Prabhu? I'm sorry, your voice is breaking up a little bit.
The witch that follow Brahma everywhere.
The witch. So she is described as the personification of sin. So just like Yamadutas are the personification of death. So they come and they assist the activity of death. So similarly, she was the personification of sin.
Okay. Yeah, this is the first time I'm hearing this. Yamaduta we've heard many times. Personification of sin, this is the first time.
Yeah, I'm guessing Indra was able to see her because of his exalted position. She's probably busy running everywhere behind everybody, but Indra was able to see her.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. We do see a lot of learnings with Vitrasura pastime, right? Especially on this last class, actually, on the karma and duty, where Indra, when after he killed Vitrasura, the sages promised to perform a sacrifice, right? Where he was suffering due to killing Vitrasura. So, coming to our any sadhaka or any devotee situation, how to see the difference between this mitigating a reaction of killing or some activity which leads to a sin and transcending the consciousness that leads to it.
Thank you, Prabhu. It's a good question. So I guess one of the lessons from this chapter is what not to do. Is to not to go and deliberately perform a sin, expecting that you can perform some kind of penances and neutralize it, because that just amplifies the effect of the sin and contaminates the consciousness. For the age of Kali, for people like us, following. So in the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that one who does not act according to the Vedic injunctions should be considered to be demoniac. So they are considered to be sinful. And he prefaces that by saying that it's the responsibility of the person to study the scriptures, understand that what is recommended and what is prohibited, and then accordingly act. So Krishna is covering the loophole where people might say that Mea culpa, ignorance is bliss. I don't know the scriptures, hence I cannot be held accountable for it. And Prabhupada often uses the example of traveling in a foreign country. And if you're traveling, you should be aware of the rules of the country. If you break it, you'll be punished. You can't say that I'm a foreigner. You're still accountable for the rules. Now, for our current day and age, we have very little understanding of what the scriptures say. Most of the scriptures are lost. So, for devotees following the four regulative principles and chanting, that's the safety net that we have. In addition to that, generally following the broad guidelines of dharma, like not stealing, ahimsa, no violence. So the finer details of dharma are very difficult to understand and follow. Right? Like it said, one of the duties of the grahastha is they should not eat unless they have ascertained that nobody in the neighborhood is hungry. So before they eat, they're supposed to go out and they're supposed to say that I'm ready to eat, but if anybody is hungry, please come to my house. And it's a duty of a grahastha, right? So we don't. So those are like the finer details that either we don't know, or if we know, we cannot practice it. So our primary shelter is following the four regulative principles, chanting the holy name, and then following the general precepts of dharma. Thank you. Thank you for good question. Okay, so if there are no more questions, then we'll move on to the next chapter, chapter 14, King Chitraketu's lamentation. So this is a slightly long chapter with 61 verses. 14th chapter and 16th chapter, they're long chapters. Both have 60 plus verses. Other chapters are short chapters. So this chapter, as I mentioned, we started from the beginning. We had the end. Now the intermediate stages are being described. So this is describing the mindset of Chitraketu in details. So we already know that when Angira went, Chitraketu he said he didn't have a child. So we know what the situation was. But this is going to explain it in greater details. Verse 1. Si parikshit vacha rajastama svabhavasya brahman vritasya papamanah narayane bhagvati katham asi dridamati. King Parikshit inquired from Sukadeva Goswami, O learned Brahman, demons are generally sinful, being obsessed with the modes of passion and ignorance. How then could Vritrasur have attained such exalted love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan? So in 8 verses is Parikshit's inquiry about Vritrasur. Right? So because he was obviously a full-out demon, not only did he look like a demon, he acted like a demon. He was attacking the devas, trying to eat them, kill them. So all the external manifestation of the demon, so fully there in Vritrasur. So Maharaj Parikshit is wondering that how could he have been such an exalted devotee? So one of the points that is made over here is that how do we know? Or maybe let me ask you this question and see what your thoughts are. That how does Parikshit Maharaj know? How do we know that Vritrasur is a great devotee? He was doing all demoniac things. He was in the battlefield, and even before, while he was dying, he was trying to eat the devas. Pretty demoniac. So, how do we know that he was a devotee?
He was ready to die. Compared to Indra, he was fighting to get his his opulence back. Compared to Vitrasur, he was ready to die for that.
Okay, that's a good point. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, in some of the verses, it was he was clearly saying like his desire to please the Supreme Lord is visible, because everything that he is talking in connection with Krishna. So those that made me feel that he is
Okay.
devotee.
Is the question about Vritrasura, how is a great devotee, Prabhu?
But Vitrasura, yeah.
Is it not like Vritrasura had like a higher consciousness where he was judging not by birth or anything that sort, like compared to Indra?
True. So good points. I think the essence is that Vritrasur's, we did not know that Vritrasur was a devotee until Vritrasur spoke. And when he spoke very high philosophy. But then anybody can speak high philosophy. But then, like Sai Prabhu was saying, that he demonstrated his sincerity by acting on that philosophy. Because Vritrasur could have been like Indra got demoralized. If Vritrasur was an outright demon, he would have taken advantage of that and killed Indra. But instead, he preached to Indra that pick up your weapon, don't worry about victory or loss, let that be all with the Lord. You do your karma, I'm doing my karma. He was preaching to him, even though he knew that the result of the preaching would be his death, but he was completely detached. So he spoke, and then he acted upon what he spoke, because otherwise he was created as an asura by Twasta. His body was that of an asura. His activities were like that of an asura. So Prabhupada would say that a fool is revealed when he opens his mouth. And the opposite is also true. That a wise man is revealed when he opens his mouth. What is the other example of this in Bhagavatam?
Wise man is Jadabharat speaking.
Chat Bharat, very good. So we have two examples, or at least two examples. We have the example of Sukadeva Goswami, that before he spoke, then they all thought he was mad. He was without clothes. The children were following him. The women were following him. They were teasing him. But when he entered into the Sabha, then even the Brahma Rishi stood up to respect him. And then he sat and he spoke. And for 7 days, these really, really exalted personalities sat in front of him and heard him. Right. Same thing with Jat Bharat. That till the time he spoke, Maharaj Rahugana considered him to be a fool. And when he spoke, then he immediately fell to his feet. So demons are afflicted by the modes of passion and ignorance, which is what Maharaj Parikshit is saying. They have a sinful mentality, right? And one who is sinful cannot have a dridha mati. And so he is saying that how could, he said, Katham asit dridamati. So what is dridamati? Vivasatmika buddhi ek hai kurunantana. Drid means tenacious. So it was unwavering in its desire to serve Krishna. So for Vritrasur, the attire was missing, but the attitude was there. Right? And that attitude is revealed when he spoke and when he acted upon his speech. So the attitude is revealed by his prayers. When he says that, I would like to become a dasanuda. He said, I want to become a servant of a devotee. Right? And Maharaj Parikshit will in a way answer his own question in the next set of verses. Verse 2. Devanam Shuddha Sattvanam Rishinam Cha Malatmanam Bhaktir Mukunda Charane Na Prayana Pajayate. Demigods are situated in the mode of goodness, and great saints cleansed of the sin of material enjoyment hardly ever render pure devotional service at the lotus feet of Mukunda. And then Prabhupada writes within brackets, and this is not in the verse, but he writes there to set context, that Parikshit Maharaj is asking is, therefore, how could Vritrasura have become such a great devotee? Right, so Maharaj Parikshit is talking about karma, jnana, and astanga. So the devas, by performing pious activities, they reach their position. The great saints, some of them are very exalted in knowledge, and there are others who are very advanced in Astanga Yoga, and through that they completely control the senses. But he says, even despite these personalities being situated in the mode of goodness, purified by karma, jnana, and astanga, will rarely display this kind of bhakti, Mukunda Charane bhakti. So this kind of bhakti. So how could Vritrasur become such a devotee? Now Maharaj Parikshit is well aware that while bhakti is rare, it is also independent. So when he says that devas, he is not indicating that bhakti does not appear in those who are pious. Right? That would negate the definition of bhakti. Just like it can appear in those who are impious, you cannot say that it won't appear in the devas just because they are in the mode of goodness. But Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Maharaj Parikshit is saying that Devanam Shuddha Sattvanam. So Shuddha Sattvanam means that in those with Antakarana having Sattva Guna. So Gyan develops on its own after the purification of the Antakarana. Right? This is not so with Bhakti, since without the association of devotees, Bhakti does not appear. Right? So Maharaj Parikshit, he is also making this point that by following this process of purification, one can go to successively higher stages. And so by the performance of pious activities, one purifies their Antakarana. Antakarana is the subtle body. And the subtle body then becomes a fertile ground for Gyan to develop. So Gyan is Atma Gyan, knowledge of the self, and Paramatma Gyan later on, knowledge of the Super Soul. So the process leads to one process stage leads to another. But bhakti does not work that way. One cannot say that I have reached this stage of bhakti and the next stage of bhakti will automatically appear. Why? Because bhakti needs the active mercy of the Lord to be constantly manifesting through his devotees. So Parikshit Maharaj is putting his finger on this point that Vritrasura had no association, but yet his bhakti developed to this stage. Right. So he's making 2 points here. Right. So one point that he's making is the rarity of bhakti. It does not even appear in the devas and the rishis. How did it appear in Vritrasura? And the second more subtle point that he's making is that without sangha, bhakti cannot flourish. Unlike karma, jnana, etc., that you don't need sangha, you continue to do the activities, it will flourish. Karma will become jnana, jnana will become astang, but not so with bhakti. It needs Vaishnava sangha, and Vritrasura obviously did not have Vaishnava sangha. In verse 3, Rajobhi sam sankhyaتا parthavirya jantavah tesham yeke chane hante shreyo vai manujadayah. In this material world, there are as many living entities as atoms. Among these living entities, a very few are human beings, and among them, few are interested in following religious principles. So he's building the case for the rarity of bhakti. Next verse. Prayo mumukshavaste kechanem dvijottama mumukshunam sahasreshu kashchin muchyate siddhyati. O best of the Brahmans, Sukadeva Goswami, out of many persons who follow religious principles, only a few desire liberation from the material world. Among many thousands who desire liberation, one will actually achieve liberation, giving up material attachment to society, friendship, love, country, home, wife, and children. Among many thousands of such liberated persons, one who can understand the true meaning of liberation is very rare. Right? So he's starting from a wide pool and then basically saying very few are. There are billions of living entities, very few are human form of life. Out of them, very few are pious. Amongst the pious, there are very few who are moksha kankshi, they're desiring liberation. Very few of the who desire liberation actually get liberation. And amongst very few, those who get liberation, those who understand the true meaning of liberation, which essentially now is pointing to Krishna, are very, very rare. So Prabhupada mentioned that there are 4 classes of men: karmis, jnani, yogis, and bhaktas. The statement pertains especially to karmis and jnanis. A karmi tries to be happy within this material world by changing from one boy to another. His objective is bodily comfort either in this planet or another. When such a person becomes a jnani, he aspires for liberation from material bondage. Among many such persons who aspire for liberation, one actually becomes liberated. Such a person gives up attachment for society, friendship, etc. Among many such persons who are in the Vanapa stage, one may understand the value of becoming a sannyasi, completely accepting the renounced order of life. Right? So we see that Prabhupada is kind of following the theme that Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur develops, that this rarity, he's mapping it to the ashrams. And I'll talk about it when we come. Let me see how we're doing with time. Okay, when we complete this thing, then the next verse, then we'll talk about how to map to the ashram souls. Or maybe not. I think the next verse has a fairly extensive purport. But this verse is very famous. Muktanam apisiddhanam narayana prayana sadurlabha prashantatma koteshvapi mahamuni. Muktanamapi Siddharma. Narayana Prayana. So I'll stop over here, even though it kind of fits. It's the conclusion of these two verses that Maharaj Parikshit says. And both Prabhupada and Vishnu Chakravarti have a fairly extensive purport, so I want to make sure that we do justice to it. I'll stop here and see if there's any thoughts about. I know we discussed just 4 verses, but if anybody has any thoughts. Okay, if not, we'll end a few minutes early. And so sorry about this. I know last Wednesday, last few weeks I was trying to align it, but we'll follow our Monday, Wednesday now. So if you can just plan for it, would appreciate it. And my hope is to complete the 6th canto by the end of the year. And so the 6th canto has a total of about 800 verses, and it has 19 chapters. So we are currently in the 14th chapter, and like I said, other than one chapter that's long, other chapters are not that long. So I think doing twice a week, we should comfortably be able to finish it by the end of the calendar year. वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितनाम पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमः कुरु वैष्णववृन्द की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, थाई गौर प्रेमानंद। Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
The recording has stopped.